And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today, we're talking about the latest news around the Chicago Bulls as they go ahead and they officially sign Yuki Kawamura to a two-way contract. Next, we're going to be talking about the most recent sign and trade rumors around Jonathan Kuminga. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button. Just like Modest Buzelis, slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. Make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the latest breaking news around the Chicago Bulls. And so if you've not got a chance to see this, the Chicago Bulls officially signed Yuki Kawamura to a two-way contract. And so with that, now the Chicago Bulls have all three spots taken care of. It appears that they went ahead and they waived Jameer Young. And so right now you have Yuki Kawamura, you have Emmanuel Miller, and then Lachlan Ubrick are the three players on a two-way contract that will be heading into the NBA season. And so going into my thoughts on this signing, I think that this was a terrific move. I said this in yesterday's video that I felt like that even if the Chicago Bulls did not go out and sign Yuki Kawamura to at least a two-way contract, I felt like somebody else in the NBA certainly should and would give him a look. And so I like it that the Chicago Bulls went ahead and they got Yuki. I think that this is going to be really important to the Windy City Bulls and just developing our younger talent, especially when you're looking at Noah Asingay and then also to Lachlan Ubrick. I think that these are two players that definitely are going to be in a bit of a development stage. But when you look at what you saw with Yuki throughout the summer league, I thought he was terrific with his defensive intensity. We talked about how he was picking up full court. He called some 8-second violations out there. He was getting steals and things like that. So defensively, he brings that type of energy. And then offensively with what he does, I mean, that definitely would prepare you for what you're going to face with the bigger club when you start to play the regular season games, because this is a point guard that is going to push the tempo. He understands how to work the pick and roll, and he's going to make you better as far as being a transition player and a slasher, because if you run, Yuki Kawamura will find you. And I think that that is something that you would see with the bigger club when you're looking at Josh Giddey, Coby White, Trey Jones, even Javon Carter to a certain extent. Like, those guys will be able to find you in transition. And so I like the fact that they go out and they get Yuki here. I think he's going to be tremendous for this team as far as developing the younger talent. And I'm glad to see that the Chicago Bulls went ahead and they're keeping Yuki Kawamura. So next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the most recent rumors here around Jonathan Kuminga, because there are a ton right now. And so going back to an earlier report that we talked about earlier this week in the Stein line with Jake L. Fisher, he was talking about how Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls were about $10 million apart. Well, in that same article, he mentions that Jonathan Kuminga's camp was really pushing for a sign and trade to the Chicago Bulls. And so that is update number one, just going back and looking back at that Stein line. That was something that came out of there. But next, we get a little bit more insight here from Jake L. Fisher as he talks a little bit more details about this. And so you can go over and you can check out this article on Bleacher Nation. This was written yesterday here. But within this article, you're going to be able to see what Jake L. Fisher had to say on his Bleacher Live report, where he's talking about several different topics, within the NBA, and Jonathan Kuminga comes up in there. And so once again, you can click the link, but we're also going to take a look at what he had to say there, or at least, the excerpt that just really drives home the point that Jonathan Kuminga is very much interested in the Chicago Bulls. I'm not sure if that's still current, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. But this is what he had to say. He says that, I do know Kuminga's representation was trying to figure out some sign and trade scenario that would have gotten both Josh Giddey and Jonathan Kuminga paid in Chicago. I think that would have been something more likely if the Bulls waited and had Lonzo Ball to send back to the Golden State Warriors instead of that deal that they already made with Cleveland. I think that this is something Golden State would have liked. All right. And so Jake L. Fisher, NBA insider, giving us some more insight as to what has been going on with Jonathan Kuminga and a possible sign and trade here to the Chicago Bulls. And so on top of that, this was the most recent report after that. And so you can go over to sportsillustrated.com and you can read this. And this was Brett Siegel, and his tweet is actually within this article. And this was today. And it says that Kuminga and his camp want a big deal in the 30 million range and don't want to be back with the Warriors. Golden State wants a small deal in the 20 million range where they can go ahead and they can flip him. And it also says that, look, the Dubs still holding out that a sign and trade with the Bulls can happen. Ayo Dosunmu is a good player. And so this was Brett Siegel, and he was asked about, I think, a question about the Golden State Warriors, and this was his reply, and this is also in that article as well. And so, look, you have several different updates from two insiders, and let's talk about it because it is a possibility that the Chicago Bulls could still go out and they could make a sign and trade for Jonathan Kuminga. I think that when you look at Jonathan Kuminga and really what he brings to the table and just really what the Chicago Bulls have reportedly been looking for, and I'm talking about what AK has said, looking for younger players that have some experience, Jonathan Kuminga definitely fits the bill here. I mean, I believe he's 22 years old here. So if you're looking at upside, Jonathan Kuminga has it. You're looking at a player that has found a way to be somewhat of a scorer at 15.3 points per game. You're looking at a player that I think he leaves a little bit to be desired when it comes down to rebounding the basketball at this point in time at 4.6 rebounds a game. But given, with his role with the Golden State Warriors, I think that if you're taking a swing on that upside, you're betting on the fact that once he gets some more usage rate, he perhaps has a chance to find himself a little bit more in this league. And I think that that's true with Jonathan Kuminga. I absolutely think that is for sure true. When you look at the career numbers as far as his three-point percentage, 33.2, not bad. I think that that's something he would have to get better at, especially with the way the Chicago Bulls like to play. At 45.4% as far as his field goal percentage is concerned here. So again, some solid numbers for Jonathan Kuminga. And I think that you would see this type of player and you say, okay, this definitely fits what the Chicago Bulls and AK wants to do. But I think the bottom line here is this ship might have sailed. I think that it's still a possibility that the Chicago Bulls could do this. But, just going back to what was mentioned, when you look at the fact that you ship off Lonzo Ball, who he was at $10 million per year right there with the contract that he had, that gets you halfway to what you would need to do with Jonathan Kuminga, because we've talked about this, and this is something that was also mentioned, I believe, by KC Johnson, and it's pretty much out there now, that in a sign and trade situation, the Golden State Warriors are going to have to take back half of the new money, which means this: if he's looking to make, $25 million there, you at least need to take back about 12 and some change here to make this thing realistically start to work. And so when you're looking at that, there's only a couple players that really fit the bill for this. This means that you would more likely have to part ways with a guy like Coby White, or you're going to have to part ways with a guy like Ayo Dosunmu, which was mentioned in that tweet. I think that both of those salaries would essentially be a salary match here, because with Ayo, he's at 7.5 million. That gets you a little bit of the ways there. You would probably have to add in another player to get there. And then with Coby White, look, he's right there with the amount of money that, you would want to look for at the $12.8 million. The reason why Vooch would not work is because if you're taking back half of the new money, that would suggest that the Chicago Bulls would be willing to pay Jonathan Kuminga $40 million per year. And I don't think that that is a reality with the Chicago Bulls. And I really don't think that that is a reality around the rest of the NBA. And so that is why I believe a sign and trade for Vooch, it just would not happen there. And so that, I think that that's what it comes down to. These two players, one of these two would have to be on the move, I think, for the Golden State Warriors to be interested. And then Jonathan Kuminga is going to have to settle in right around like $25 million here. And so, I don't know if this is something that the Bulls could still explore at this point in time, especially since you already have, I think a lot more forwards now to work with, because this would mean that if you were to trade for Jonathan Kuminga, you would have Isaac Okoro, you have Jonathan Kuminga, you would have Modest Buzelis, you still have Patrick Williams. Yes, you still have Patrick Williams. I'm not sure that there is a deal on the table for Patrick Williams, especially with the way that he played last season. Then you also have, Julian Phillips out there as well. I think that, if he's not included in the deal, then you would probably have him. And so you also have Noah Asingay, who you just drafted. So you have a lot of different forwards here. And so you would actually be doing the reverse of what you've had, which is having a lot of guards. And so now you have a lot of forwards. You probably are going to be in the way from the development here of Noah Asingay. And I just think that this is a move that, it probably would have made a lot more sense there if you would have explored this move versus what you got with Isaac Okoro. Now, don't get me wrong, Isaac Okoro from the financial standpoint, you're not paying as much, but the upside with Jonathan Kuminga might be there, with him. And also, too, it would maybe fit what you want to do with the long-term build of this team. Because remember, I know Jonathan Kuminga and, just basically what his struggles are right now as a player. But I really do believe that if you give him some more usage and you put him into the right situation, I do think that there is a reality where Jonathan Kuminga can really flourish as an NBA player. And he also has has experience as an NBA champion. I think that you have to also credit that as well when you're bringing that to your locker room. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here, is this something that you would like the Chicago Bulls to explore? Do you think that they should be looking to still try to ship off, Ayo Dosunmu or Coby White in a deal to possibly get Jonathan Kuminga over? Would this be something that you would want to see? Or do you feel like that, look, that ship has sailed at this point in time? Let's just focus more so on getting Josh Giddey taken care of and kind of going from that point on. Because remember, if you're going ahead and you sign Josh Giddey, the roster is full at that point. Now you would have to literally move a player to add Jonathan Kuminga. Like, that's just the bottom line here with the Chicago Bulls. And so let's see what happens. And so once again, this is the most recent rumors around Jonathan Kuminga. And also, too, as well, we got some great news with this update that the Chicago Bulls have officially signed Yuki Kawamura to a two-way deal. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that as well. And as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.